Hey everybody, it's Susie from the dead. I was at a conference one week and then got the flu, so I'm sorry you've not seen me in a couple of Tech Tuesdays, but I hope you've enjoyed Tuesday. I hope you've done something else techie or personal or whatever. And glad to be with you tonight talking about blended learning. And I want to start by saying that I'm very far along in my blended learning journey. I'm trying to get that out of my mouth. So if you are someone who's like, I don't even know what blended learning is, or if you're someone where your school maybe rolled out Chromebooks and they're like, we're going to do blended learning, but you're still kind of, don't know how to do it, well, hey, Anna, then tonight is all about you because I'm going to share 10 tips for blended learning that is done right. And so I want to kind of group these tips. And so my first 4 tips are going to all be about the definition of blended learning. So let's talk about that. The way that I remember it is time, place, path, pace. Hey, Jamie. And so if you're trying to do blended learning, it's basically a combination of a teacher in the classroom and online, okay? I think probably the way I understood it, or when I was still in my classroom teaching high school, I maybe had online elements. Kids would get on their phones and we'd take quizzes, or we would, look up articles and do research online or things like that. But that's not really blended learning. Blended learning makes space for the teacher to get involved with the kids because the online is taking some of the load. And so again, my first 4 tips are going to be time, place, path, pace. So let's talk about what those mean. First of all, those are the 4 areas where students should have some control some of the time. So that does not mean that kids are always going to get to choose, I want to go to the beach and work on my work or whatever, but they are going to do time, place, path, pace, at least some of the time. So let's break those down. Let's talk about time. And wrote myself some notes just so I didn't forget anything. But students obviously are probably like adults. And I will be honest, if you would let me work every day from 8 to 11, maybe 12, then I feel like be just as productive as I am working the whole day. You know why? Because later in the day is just not my number one cup of tea kind of a thing. And so I know students have to be at school all day, but what if we took as a tip, what if we allowed them or taught them how to take all the things they have to get done that day? Say they do have an agenda and it has all these different things, but because the learning is somewhat online, the blended concept, we allowed them to prioritize things they needed to get done at their most productive times. So we let them take a test to determine what's your most productive time. Now, and then we taught them strategies like, okay, what are your top 3 things you have to accomplish today for it to be a successful day? And then we taught them to attack the most important thing first, or we taught them to attack the most difficult thing first. Then giving them that control over their time. Maybe not what they have to accomplish, but when they accomplish it, in what order, what priority list is really going to be mind-blowing for them. And we as adults are not just teaching them how to live, in desks and rows and work in an assembly line like schools used to be, but with the advent of blended learning, we now have the capability to allow them some control over their time, which I think is pretty fascinating. So remember I said time, place. Let's talk about that one. This can be as simple as having flexible seating in your classroom. Flexible seating wasn't a movement when I was a teacher, but I do remember having this fantasy that I wanted to get a bunk bed like they had in first grade. And then I thought 8th graders with a bunk bed, just being honest, I probably wouldn't be able to leave the room. But I wanted to have one of the bunk beds where it was just a top and then put like a couch at the bottom and let them sit and read. So I never did get that accomplished, but what I did have were beanbag chairs in my room, and I had round tables. I removed all desks the last several years I was teaching middle school. And so I had round tables, and I had beanbag chairs, and you could go sit by the window. If you were reading, we're doing To Kill a Mockingbird, and you want to go sit by the window, I don't have a problem with that. And so it was student control. The way that I let them control their seating was through their behavior. So a student who was doing a really good job paying attention, you can go sit on a beanbag chair today or whatever. And then by allowing them to sit at tables, which that means they're facing each other, there's more opportunity to talk. Again, I was allowing a little bit of control over place. So that's just one way to allow students to have control over the place of their learning. But what about if some students need to go to the media center? What if some students need to do some of their work at home? Again, if it goes with time, then we're helping them to prioritize and goal set, so that way the place is a little bit more negotiable. Number 3, path. There are different ways that all of us learn, and I'll just tell a story about crocheting. So a few years ago, I decided to go take crochet classes because I had bought a book called Crocheting for Children or something to that effect. And apparently I am not smarter than a fifth grader or whoever that book was written for, because I could not crochet. I would get the yarn. I don't know if you guys, you can give me a shout out in the comment window if you're a crocheter or if you know how to do just a big long string of knots, okay? That was my competency level when I got the book. And at the end of looking at this book, still my competency level. I think I also tried looking on YouTube, and I was finally like, you know what? I just went to a yarn shop. I paid $40, and because I had paid to be there and because the lady was looking at me, it was still just as frustrating, but I left there knowing how to crochet. So I'm not great at it, but I can do it now. What does it have to do with kids and their place, or their path, excuse me? Some kids are going to be your video learners. Some kids are going to have to come up to the smartboard with you and do a lesson. Some students are going to have to do manipulatives or worksheets. Some students are going to have to revisit the same resource over and over. So if you give kids paths, and they can, as long as they can pass this test or do this project or whatever your end goal is for them, as long as they can do that, who cares how they get there? Who cares what their strategy is? So their path could be, watch this video, watch it again because I need it. Their path could be, let me take a pretest, ace it, and move on to the next thing. But you're giving them options in that area, and that is the third component of blended learning. And then number 4, pace. I know we all have standards to cover, but here's the deal. We can get to the end of all the standards at the end of the year, and if students only halfway knew them, then we may have covered them, but we haven't accomplished anything. So if you give kids a little bit of control over their pace, then kids who need to move ahead can move ahead. Kids who need to revisit can revisit. But what's so cool about that is you're not having to make yourself available every minute of every day to do those, repeats and reviews. You will. It doesn't mean you're going to sit at your desk and not do that at all. But the video is available, or the, interactive manipulatives or whatever are available in the online part, so that you're freed up to be able to do more of what you need to do and what only a person can do. So the definition is 4 parts for blended learning. Students have at least some control over time, place, path, and pace of their learning. So if you don't remember anything else, remember those 4. Say them with me. Time, place, path, pace. When I heard that, it really helped me to cement in my mind the difference between blended learning and just we have an LMS, okay? My 5th tip for you tonight is about actually the preparation for blended learning. So now that you know what it is, here's what I want you to focus on as far as preparing for it. You want your learning management system, if that's what you're using. So if you're using OneNote Class Notebook or Teams, Microsoft Teams, or Google Classroom, or Canvas, like our district uses, whatever your learning management or content delivery system is for the online part of blended learning, you want that to be a one-stop shop. Whether your kids are in kindergarten or they're in 12th grade, you want them to believe that this one place has every resource they need, because you are the magnificent teacher. You know better than anybody how to curate content for them. You've delved into all kinds of resources, and you've pulled in the best of what they need, and you've put it in this one place. If they're going to get used to blended learning, which means they're not always going to be coming up listening to you, then they need to know that they go to that Google Classroom or that Canvas LMS or whatever it is for everything they need, to make an appointment with you, to contact you for your resources, whatever it is. So you've got to prepare them that way. And then also you have to prepare them for learning online. How do they learn online? I'm going to, at the end of this broadcast, or I have another broadcast right after this, so in the next hour or so, I'm going to be putting links over here to several blended learning workshops I went to at TCEA, which I'm going to refer to again in a minute. But also, I'm going to be putting a link to a module I created that teaches kids how to actually learn online. If they've never done that before, and if you're in a blended environment, that means at least some of the time they will be learning online, then they need to know how to do that. So things like time management and netiquette is what we used to call it. So I have that resource for you, and I will share it in comments as soon as we get done. Okay, so we've got 4 tips for definition related things. We've got 1 tip for preparation. Okay, my next 3 tips are all about the benefits of blended learning. So number 6 is that you can buy back time. I want you to think of all the things that you have to teach, reteach, review over and over and over again. And if you're like me, you might have a couple ways that you can introduce that same topic, but you don't have like infinite ways. So pretty much if you've said it 2 or 3 different ways, you're like, okay, I'm spent on this. I don't know how else to explain object of a preposition, whatever it is, okay? So probably for students, what it's going to be is not a new way, but repeating the way. So tip number 6, buying back time. If you are learning at least part of the time online, that means that you can find whatever number of explanations you need, okay? But kids can revisit them over and over. You're not having to explain the same concept over and over and over again. You are, but it's your video self doing it. So you're able to redeem the time and be able to help kids that do need, again, that human touch. You're buying back time on procedures. So if you want to take, for example, just a silly thing I created, I went to ThingLink. If you've never been there, really cool. It allows you to hotspot a picture and link out to other text or other links or whatever. And so I did a tour of the Canvas dashboard for teachers. Rather than always telling them, okay, here's how you go to settings and here's what it is, I have hotspots there. Now I can take that and I can embed that in my learning management system. So think about how you could do that for your classroom. Maybe you take a 360-degree image of your classroom and you put that on ThingLink and you hotspot, okay, here's what I want you to do when you need to sharpen your pencil. Here's what I need you to do when you want to turn in papers or find a no-name paper or whatever the topic may be. Then you have effectively bought back time from redelivering those procedures over and over and over again because you can store them in your learning management system, okay? Tip number 7 is related to that. It's cloning yourself. You may not have, I had students in my classroom at any given time who might be English language learners, who might have dyslexia, who might have learning disabilities, and that did not always mean, depending on their needs, it did not always mean that I had an extra teacher in the room. Okay. And so, or maybe I did have an extra teacher in the room, and I'm honest, there were times I had a fabulous teacher who could have taught just as well as me. There were times when the other teacher either was not comfortable or was not willing to teach alongside me in the true co-teaching model. So what's so cool about blended learning is that a part of that is you're able to clone yourself. I can be teaching a group on video while I'm teaching a group in person, while I'm delivering some other resource through a module. I mean, I can have multiple visions of myself without being Dolly the sheep. And I can, because part of the learning is online and part is face-to-face, I'm cloning myself. So tip number 7 is find ways to clone yourself. Again, whether that's video you created or video you found, find someone who teaches as well as you do, or teach it yourself on video. And then you've got this alternate universe almost where kids can access it at their own time, their own place, their own path, and their own pace. And you are cloning yourself without having to add somebody else to the salary. Number 8, this one is going to be a shout out to parents, and it's another benefit. Remember, on the benefits section of my tips, and this is going to be a shout out or something for you to help parents. I taught students with crazy parents. Have you ever taught any of those? Give me a shout out in the comments over there. However, I think the majority of parents I taught, even if sometimes they were misguided or didn't communicate exactly their concern in the best way, wanted to help their kids. I don't think most parents are like, man, I want my kid to fail today, or, you know, I want to do all the work for my kids or whatever. Some do. But another benefit of blended learning done right is that if you do it right, parents can help their kids. They're freed up. So for example, do, like I said, a little classroom procedure tour, not just for your students who forget, but also for your parents. Or for example, I created, or if I were teaching in the classroom, then I would create a tour of my Canvas LMS. Parents, I want you to see the calendar. I would create it myself, not just the instructional technology person do it, because I feel like it's a better connection when your parents hear from you. But I would actually do a video tour of Google Classroom or of Canvas Learning Management System or of Microsoft Teams or whatever it is. Show them the buttons. Tell them where you're putting everything. Number 2, be consistent. So I'm just going to use Canvas as an example. Canvas Learning Management System has a tool called Modules. If I were a teacher in the classroom right now, and I'm doing this even when I teach teachers, I'm organizing everything in modules. So every time, all a parent has to do is go to the modules. This is the unit we're on. These are This is every bit of material you need. These are my vocabulary words. This is my quiz. This is my essay. Not so the parent can do the stuff, but so they can get on their kid about doing the stuff and they can actually help them. And then number 3, kind of a sub tip of this one in related to making it simple enough that parents can help, is anything extra, any extra feature that you can turn off because you're not using it, turn it off. If you were to look at the Canvas dashboard, I just keep going back to that as an example, but probably the same in Google Classroom. There are features that are really cool, as my friend Joy would say, Corvette type features. Features that I do intend to use at some point, but I'm not using them now. Turn off all of those buttons so when parents go, it's very clear. Oh, here's a calendar. Here's when things are happening. If I'm looking for the resources, here are my modules again. So tip number 8 for blended learning, keep it simple. Don't have a bunch of clutter in there. Be consistent. And even better than that, if you can get your team or your grade level or your department to be consistent with you so that parents know, you know what, every time my 8th grade child, every time I'm trying to help them with this learning management system or this online portion of the learning, I can find what I'm looking for. It's not hard and I'm not frustrated and not willing to try again. Okay? My last 2 tips are not exclusively related to blended learning. They are just good pedagogy, just best practice. So number 9 is going to be keep it engaging. No one, not even me, I haven't done any online classes for quite a few years, but no one enjoys reading something that is like a digital textbook. It's just been moved online. Or it's like a paper textbook just moved online. No student wants to come to your LMS or your Google Classroom or whatever and see a PDF, a video. Oh my word. Make sure, and I talked about this on a previous week, that you break up into chunks. So whether that is you face-to-face, because remember, blended is teacher plus online coming together. So whether that is the you part or the online part, make sure that you are focusing not only on strong content, which is of course the most important thing, but also on making it engaging so that you would actually want to learn it, so that you don't fall asleep teaching your own class. Last time I taught 9th grade 5 times a day. And so by the time I got to 7th period, I was like, y'all, did I already say this? I was bored with my own stuff. So if you can find a way to pep it up for you, I guarantee that you're going to have more enthusiasm and your students will too. Tip number 10 is to make differentiation no longer a separate piece, but it's just what you do. So with blended learning, you're able to offer, let's just say 3 tracks, okay? 1 track is teacher-led, and because grouping can be flexible depending on the day, what kids need, some days I might have this group of learners or this group of learners who is advanced on this one topic or a struggling group of learners, but I've got kind of a teacher-led station on any given topic. And then I also have maybe a video component and maybe I have a written component. Some way I am differentiating whether I'm giving kids opportunities to address their different learning styles, their different abilities on a topic, their modality. Do they like to learn online? Do they like to learn face-to-face? And again, being flexible with all of that. But your differentiation should no longer be a sideshow. It's the same as our district just adopted the ISTE standards, even though our state has not yet adopted the new version. Our district just adopted the ISTE standards for students and educators, I believe. Okay, I might be telling a lie there. We certainly adopted the ones for students. And so as technology should be embedded in the curriculum, not just, hey guys, today's going to be a technology day. It's no longer a novelty. The same with differentiation. Y'all, that term has been around so long, and blended learning done right, it offers multiple paths, time, place, path, pace. It offers those multiple paths, that high quality differentiation, and kids on any given day can attack the content in the way that works for them. The way that I attack literature, which is one of my great loves, it's what I taught. I mean, I can talk symbolism and metaphor and simile and just eat it up and read the same poem over and over and get something new every time. Is not the same way I'm going to attack. I hopefully never have to attack calculus again. But giving students different options, but making sure they're all high quality is tip number 10. So let me just quickly review. You got to be prepared. Make your blended learning a one-stop shop, whatever the online component of it is. The next 4, kids need to have control over time, place, path, and pace, at least part of the time. The next 3 were benefits. So to do blended learning right, make sure you're buying back time, you're cloning yourself, and you're simplifying so that parents can help on the online part at home. And then finally, good pedagogy. Make sure you're engaging and make sure differentiation happens naturally and that the quality of the resources that you're differentiating with are the same. Guys, I so appreciate you being patient with me as I was so sick. And I meant to start by saying that I just got back from Austin, Texas, and I went to a fabulous educational technology conference. It was called TCEA. So if you're a Twitter person, you can follow me on there at Susie Lawley. I tweeted a lot of resources from TCEA, but I also want to give credit to the people who inspired me to talk about what I'm talking about tonight. So over in the comments, I will leave links to anything I have a link to related to blended learning. And then I also, again, will be sharing that module that you can share with your students if you're using Canvas. If you're not using Canvas, you can look at my module and just at least see if it's something that could inspire you, but it'll allow students to know how to become online learners before they get too far into this. Hope you guys have a great night. Thanks for tuning in. And if you loved it, please share this with your friends. I so appreciate it. Good night.